Warning disclaimer, this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. All characters in this story are fictional and above the age of 20. This content is intended for entertainment purposes only. I want to tell you something I've never told anyone out loud. Not my sister. Not my therapist. Not even my journal. Because some truths sit so heavy in your chest that saying them out loud feels like dropping a grenade, and you're not sure who walks away from the blast. My name is Layla. I was 28, married to Daniel for 3 years, living in a beautiful apartment in the city, with date nights, shared playlists, and a life that looked perfect from every angle people chose to look at. And I loved him. I genuinely did. But love, I've learned, is a complicated house. Some rooms you live in every day, warm, familiar, safe. And then there are doors you never open. Not because you're hiding something, but because you don't even know what's behind them. Not until someone stands close enough to that door, and suddenly, you feel a draft. That someone was Marcus. Daniel's best friend since college. The one who gave a toast at our wedding that made half the room cry. The one who called Daniel his brother and meant it. Marcus and his girlfriend, Priya, had been together for 4 years. They were the other couple in our world, the ones we vacationed with, cooked dinner for, stayed up laughing with until 2 a.m. We were a unit. Comfortable. Balanced. Until that one weekend in October. A lake house. 2 couples. Too much wine. A board game that turned into something much more personal than any of us expected. And a moment, just one unguarded, quiet moment, where Marcus looked at me across that firelit room, and I felt something shift. Not dramatically. Not like the movies. Just a shift. The kind that's barely visible on the surface but changes the entire weight of everything underneath. I told myself it was nothing. The wine. The mood. The way firelight makes everything feel more electric than it actually is. But then he said my name. Just my name. And the way it left his mouth. I don't know how to explain it without you thinking I'm a terrible person. Maybe I am. But I need someone to hear this. All of it. Because that weekend changed everything. Daniel and Marcus had been inseparable since their sophomore year of college, the kind of friendship built in dorm hallways at midnight, over failed exams and cheap instant noodles. The kind that survives distance, relationships, careers, and all the quiet ways life tries to pull people apart. When Daniel introduced me to Marcus 2 months into our relationship, Marcus had shaken my hand, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "He talks about you like you hung the moon. Don't break the moon." I laughed. Daniel turned red. And just like that, Marcus became family. Priya came into the picture a year later, sharp, beautiful, effortlessly funny. An architect with opinions about everything and the confidence to back every single one of them. We clicked immediately. Girls' brunches turned into double dates, turned into a standing Friday dinner that none of us ever canceled. Not once in 2 years. We knew each other's orders at restaurants. We knew each other's arguments. We knew whose relationship was going through a quiet rough patch and whose was riding high, without anyone having to say a word. That's the thing about being that close to another couple. You start to see things. And lately, what I had been seeing, what I hadn't let myself name, was that Marcus noticed me. Not in an obvious way. Not in any way I could point to and say, there. That's the moment. It was smaller than that. The way he'd hand me a drink already knowing I wanted less ice. The way he'd catch a reference I made that went over everyone else's head and just, look at me. A half-second longer than necessary. A quiet smile that felt like an inside joke we hadn't made yet. And me? I started noticing when he walked into a room. I hated myself for it. That October weekend, Priya and Daniel had fallen asleep early, full from dinner, warm from wine, unbothered. Marcus and I ended up on the back porch without planning to. Just 2 people who weren't tired yet, wrapped in blankets, watching the black water of the lake move in the dark. He said, "Can I ask you something honest?" And I said yes before I even thought about whether I should. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's version of your life?" That was what he asked me. I remember the exact way the lake moved when he said it. Slow. Almost like it was listening too. I should have laughed it off. Given him some light answer about adulting and mortgages and how nobody really has it figured out. That's what I would have done at dinner, with Daniel and Priya there, where everything had a safe audience and nothing landed too deep. But it was just us. And the water. And that candle burning lower than it should have been. So I told him the truth. "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes I look at my life and it's beautiful, genuinely beautiful, and I still feel like I'm standing slightly outside of it. Like I'm watching it through glass." He didn't say, "I know what you mean," the way people do when they're just being polite. He went quiet. The real kind of quiet. The kind that means someone is actually sitting with what you said instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. Then, "Layla. Daniel doesn't know, does he? That you feel that way." It wasn't an accusation. His voice was too soft for that. Too careful. And that carefulness was what broke something open in me. Because no. Daniel didn't know. Daniel was wonderful and steady, and he loved me in the most consistent, uncomplicated way a person can love someone. But there were parts of me, restless, searching, hungry for something I couldn't name, parts that I had quietly folded up and put away somewhere he'd never have to deal with. I thought I'd hidden it well. Marcus had apparently seen every single fold. "How did you know?" I whispered. He turned to look at me then. Really look. And the distance between us on that bench, which had felt normal 10 minutes ago, suddenly felt like a decision. Like something we were both aware of and neither of us was moving to change. "Because I recognize it," he said quietly. "I feel it too." The candle went out. Neither of us moved to relight it. And in that sudden dark, with the lake breathing beneath us and the whole house sleeping just 20 feet away, something unspoken passed between us that I knew, couldn't be taken back. We didn't talk about what happened on that porch. Not that night. Not over breakfast the next morning when Priya made her famous masala omelets and Daniel kept refilling everyone's coffee and the whole kitchen smelled like cardamom and normalcy. Not during the afternoon when all four of us kayaked on the lake, laughing at Daniel's terrible paddling technique, the sun hitting the water like scattered glass. We were perfectly, professionally normal. And that almost made it worse. Because underneath every ordinary moment, I was acutely, painfully aware of Marcus in a way I had no right to be. The way he moved. The way he spoke to Priya, kind, easy, familiar. The way he helped clear the table without being asked. The way he caught my eye exactly once during lunch and then looked away so quickly it felt like a burn. We were two people pretending so hard that the pretending itself became its own kind of intimacy. By Saturday evening, I had nearly convinced myself to let it go. File it under a strange emotional moment and move on. People have those. Feelings surface and then they pass like weather. It didn't have to mean anything. And then Priya pulled me aside in the kitchen. She poured us both a glass of wine, leaned against the counter, and looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes of hers. My heart stopped completely. But what she said wasn't what I feared. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to not make it weird." I nodded. Carefully. "Marcus and I have been," she paused, choosing words like someone diffusing something delicate, struggling. "For a while now. Not fighting. Just drifting. Like we're roommates who really like each other but somewhere along the way stopped being in it." She took a long sip. "I think we both know it. We just haven't said it yet." I stood there holding my wine glass like it was the only solid thing in the room. She smiled, that small, tired smile people wear when they've been carrying something heavy for too long. I just needed to say it to someone real. Someone I trust. She trusted me. She trusted me. The guilt hit so hard I nearly set my glass down and confessed everything right there. The porch. The candle. The way her boyfriend had looked at me in the dark and said I feel it too, like it was the most natural, devastating thing in the world. But I didn't. I hugged her instead. Told her relationships go through seasons. That drifting doesn't mean drowning. I said all the right things. And later that night, when the house had gone quiet again and I slipped out to the porch for air, because I needed air, just air, nothing else, Marcus was already there. Standing at the railing. Like he'd been waiting. Like he knew I would come. He turned around slowly, and the look on his face wasn't surprise. It wasn't guilt either. It was something far more dangerous than both. It was relief. You should go back inside, Layla. That was the first thing he said. Not I've been waiting for you. Not something cinematic or rehearsed. Just that. A quiet warning dressed up as a sentence. And the fact that he said it, the fact that he was trying to give me an exit, somehow made everything harder to walk away from. I know, I said. Neither of us moved. The lake was completely still. The kind of still that only happens at 2 a.m. when the whole world has agreed to stop pretending it's doing anything other than holding its breath. Priya told me about you too, I said finally. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Tonight. In the kitchen. Something crossed his face. Pain, maybe. Or the particular exhaustion of a person who has been honest with themselves for a long time but hasn't quite found the words to be honest out loud. I know we're drifting, he said. I've known for a while. That's not, he stopped. Exhaled. That's not why I'm standing here, Layla. I need you to know that. And I believed him. That was the devastating part. I completely believed him. Because what was between us hadn't been born from his failing relationship or my restless heart alone. It had been building quietly in the spaces between four people who loved each other, in shared dinners and late nights and 1,000 small moments of being truly, genuinely seen by someone who wasn't supposed to see you that way. He took one step toward me. Just one. And I didn't step back. He reached up slowly and tucked a curl behind my ear, barely a touch, barely anything. And yet every single wall I had built over that weekend, over 3 years of marriage, over a lifetime of folding my restless parts away, came down completely. I thought about Daniel sleeping inside. I thought about Priya's tired smile in the kitchen. I thought about weddings and vows and the word family and everything it carried. And then Marcus said my name. Just my name. Again. The same way he had said it days ago that started all of this. And I finally understood. This wasn't a moment that had snuck up on us. This had been coming since the very beginning. But here is where the story turns. Because what happened next wasn't what either of us planned. The porch light flickered on. And there, standing in the doorway with her hand still on the switch and her eyes moving slowly between the two of us, was Priya. Nobody screamed. Nobody cried. That's the part nobody tells you about moments like that. You expect drama, raised voices, slamming doors, the kind of confrontation that feels scripted by grief. But real life doesn't perform for its audience. Priya just looked at us for a long moment. Then she stepped out onto the porch, closed the door quietly behind her, and sat down on the bench where Marcus and I had sat 2 nights before. I think, she said slowly, we all need to stop pretending. And that was how it began. Not with a fight. With honesty. The 4 of us talked until sunrise. Daniel woke up an hour in, drawn out by instinct, maybe, or just the silence that had replaced the sound of sleeping, and instead of anger, what followed was the most painfully real conversation any of us had ever sat inside. We talked about drifting. About loneliness inside love. About what it means to build a life with someone and slowly, without meaning to, start building walls inside it too. Marcus and Priya ended things 3 weeks later. Quietly, respectfully, the way 2 people who genuinely love each other sometimes have to. Daniel and I went to therapy. It was hard. Some sessions I drove home in silence, pulled over twice, and just sat with everything. But we stayed. We chose to stay, not out of obligation, but because beneath everything that had cracked that October weekend, what we had was still real. Still worth the repair. As for Marcus and me, we never crossed that line. What lived between us stayed exactly where it was. Unnamed. Unclaimed. But I'd be lying if I said I don't think about that porch sometimes. The still lake. The extinguished candle. The way he said my name like it meant something more than a name. I think some connections exist not to be acted on, but to wake you up. To press a mirror against the parts of yourself you'd gotten too comfortable ignoring. That weekend didn't destroy my marriage. In the strangest, most painful way, it saved it. Because I finally stopped living like I was watching my life through glass. I stepped inside it. And for the first time in years, it felt like mine.